Gen Z has an unprecedented ability to communicate. Thanks to contemporary technology, to the internet and social media, the whole wide world sits at the tips of our fingers. Currently, over 5 billion accounts actively use social media. That's billions of people united across oceans, overcoming language barriers and cultural differences. Billions of people sitting behind their screens, yet just a click away. Just looking at that number, it seems like we've reached the zenith of communication, of interconnectedness. Yet, recent studies suggest that Gen Z is the loneliest generation in modern history. In fact, over 70% of Gen Z reports feeling often or even always alone. Clearly, our so-called digital fluency is failing us. But you might be asking yourselves, how did we get here? Well, in order to answer that question, let's back up a bit to the 1990s, to an evolutionary psychologist and biological anthropologist named Robin Dunbar. While studying non-human primates, Dunbar noticed a correlation between brain size and social group size. Using these findings, he was able to deduce that primates, and thus we humans, have intrinsic pre-programmed limits to the amount of relationships we can maintain. In fact, he was able to come up with some pretty concrete conclusions. Our relationships can be broken up into a variety of categories, with each category having its own unique cap. We can only have 5 loved ones, for example, 15 close friends, 50 friends, 150 meaningful contacts, about 500 general acquaintances, and 1,500 people we can call to mind. Although people's roles within our lives can change, and they can switch from one category to the next, the takeaway is ultimately that everyone takes up a certain amount of our mental space. At a first glance, Dunbar's number, otherwise known as the rule of 150, may seem overly simplistic, a little arbitrary, but through varied scientific support, it resonates with us, which has led to and continues to lead to its popularization. It's the reason why large friend groups often look like so much fun from the outside, but in the end, some of our best, most memorable, and even our most vulnerable moments are spent with very few people. It's because it may seem cliche, but friendship takes up time, it takes up effort. We can be friendly with anyone, but friendship itself, well, that's a mutual sacrifice. Friendship is looking at someone, telling them, you're worth my time, you're worth that space, you're worth my care, you're a part of my 150. It takes perseverance, but that's part of what makes friendships and relationships so extremely fulfilling. So, how does social media fit into all of this? Well, my parents made the wise decision to keep me off of TikTok, Snapchat, Instagram, you name it, until my 16th birthday. So, of course, when I turned 16, I immediately downloaded Instagram. I also immediately entered in my birthday wrong and was banned from Instagram before ever being able to make an account. However, after overcoming that obstacle, I was able to fill out my first ever social media profile. First, I followed a couple friends. Instagram quickly figured out that I was a teenage girl, that I liked philosophy, art, poetry, and of course, the occasional puppy video. I kept scrolling, and soon I followed a few familiar faces. Soon, people started requesting to follow me, and despite only being connected by a friend of a friend of a friend, I followed them back. I got to see what my childhood friends, who I hadn't spoken to in years, were up to. Because here's the thing, social media isn't inherently bad, and we don't have to pretend like it is. It's allowed me to keep up daily conversations with people who live halfway across the world, letting them stay within my 150. It exposes us to new opinions, ideas, cultures, thoughts. It lets us see a glimpse of the world through someone else's perspective, someone we would have never even had the chance to know of if it weren't for social media. However, as with any other powerful tool, Although social media can and is used proactively, in reality, it's often abused. In a span of a few weeks, I went from being able to count close friends on my fingertips to gaining hundreds of vaguely familiar faces in my followers section. Better yet, I discovered people who I wanted to follow. They were people like me who just also happened to be influencers, content creators. When I started following them, I saw people who maybe were photo collage artists who I found particularly intriguing. Maybe it was someone passionately discussing one of my interests. Regardless, I saw myself. I saw people like me, people who loved the same things I loved, people who cared about the things I wanted to fight for. So naturally, I got invested. I got excited when a new post came out. I wanted to see the snippets of their lives that they shared through Instagram stories. Quite honestly, it was perfect. And the best part of it all, it's always there, as long as I remember to charge my phone. In many ways, social media is much more reliable than a friend could ever dream to be. A decently strong Wi-Fi signal is all it takes, and I can scroll at just about any point, whether it's first thing in the morning, last thing in the evening, or during a 5-minute break between study sessions, which will become a 10-minute break, then a 30-minute break, then an hour. If I'm feeling sad, upset, lonely, tired, or even just bored, my phone is always there. And it's always tempting to reach out and turn on the screen over and over and over again. And I'm not the only one. On average, we look at our phones almost 60 times every single day. Indeed, social media algorithms are strikingly good at getting us hooked. They have billions of accounts feeding them personal information, tracking our every move, taking note of all the content that holds our attention, and of course, everything that doesn't. They dissect us, pinpointing who we are, what we care about, who we care about, and what will make us so angry we just need to comment to let the whole wide world know how much we disagree with whatever the heck we just watched. Even on days when I was far too busy to hang out with my friends, on days where I was far enough behind on my homework assignments that I ate my food as quickly as possible in hopes of cramming in an extra 5 minutes to study, I somehow managed to keep my screen time up every single day. And no, I wasn't looking at art references or the news. I wasn't texting my friends. No. And I imagine most of, if not all of you, have been in the same situation. I was stuck scrolling. Through perpetual scrolling, we see reflections of ourselves, images carefully curated to be relatable. We bond with pixels, laughing at witty memes and crying along with sad videos. Having hundreds of followers and following hundreds of people, well, that's simply the new norm. When I downloaded Instagram, I no longer had time for the people or the activities I cared about. I was busier than ever. I was keeping up with more people than ever. My 150 was full. My mental capacity was exhausted. And yet I felt lonely. As our followers rise beyond Dunbar's number, we sacrifice time with friends for the latest TikTok, mastering the social cues associated with ghosting, posting, and self-promoting. In an era where we know more people than ever before, we can't help but feel desperately alone. So why does Gen Z feel so lonely? Well, one simple response won't suffice for such a complex question, but I'm sure we can all agree that social media certainly plays an important role. Paradoxically, our interconnectedness, being able to access anyone, anywhere, at any time, it's tearing us apart. Our days are numbered, our time is ticking, and yet we choose to spend hours alone, stimulating emotional connections and relationships with photos and algorithms. Our friends don't know us in the same way algorithms do. They talk because they want to tell stories, not because they've carefully calculated what will hold our attention. They want to spend time together, not rapidly flash bright colors and AI voiceovers at us to get our brains to produce dopamine spikes. So sometimes it's just a little easier to give up some of our 150 spaces to someone, something sitting on the other side of a screen, to give up space to daily posts, to give up space to the latest trend, rather than attempt to stay connected with the people who we truly care about. we can only stretch ourselves so far. We can't spend hours scrolling and hours with the people we love. So, as social media evolves, we have to unlearn our digital fluency. Let the digits drop until we reach Dunbar's number. Say hi to a stranger instead of clicking through a profile. Take a walk instead of scrolling through new content. Check in on a friend instead of on a myriad of notifications. Although it may seem counterintuitive, as the figures themselves stop rising, as we shrink towards 150, we begin to truly feel connected again. So maybe, just maybe, in order to stop feeling lonely, we need to let ourselves be lonely. We need to allow the feeling of boredom to become normal, even familiar. We have to unlearn our instinct to reach for our phone, turn on the screen anytime, any second we need someone to talk to. Because if we can afford to cram in 5 minutes of Instagram Reels before bed, we can afford to sit down, take time for ourselves, pick up a new hobby, read a new book. Being lonely isn't synonymous with being alone. So we need to be conscious of the way we're spending our time with those around us. How do we want to fill our mental space? Do we want to dedicate our 150 spaces to a teacher, a sister, a friend, family members, someone we've never met before, to ourselves, to someone we're falling out of touch with? Or do we want to fill our time with doom scrolling, with digital illusions and constructions fabricated with the sole purpose of keeping us constantly entertained, completely overstimulated? So, before I leave today, I'd like to leave each and every one of you with a challenge. Stay off social media, just for today. I promise the TikTok, the Reel, the Snap, it can wait, and it will. See if it's difficult. See if you can do it. And anytime you feel tempted to reach out for your phone, anytime you want to tell yourself, well, it's just one more video, I want you to stop and think. If we want to stop feeling lonely, we have to reinforce the relationships we already have. So, as you turn on your screen, I want each and every one of you to ask yourselves, how do you want to fill your 150 spaces? Thank you.